So let's talk about chapter 1040 of One Piece, because this was a huge chapter. So, what we finally got here in this chapter, aside from knowing even further that Law's Devil Fruit is even more incredibly broken than we thought it was, is that an emperor can be taken down. So, let's get into it. So, the cover page for this week's chapter leads really well into the idea that an emperor cannot be taken down. Not even science, not even the almighty power of the raid suits can take down Big Mom, because she seems to be fairly easily beating them down without the use of armament, without the use of her homies, without the use of her soul powers. Just her raw physical strength is too much for Niji and Yonji to overcome. Probably all of Germa, to be honest, as we saw at the Tea Party. They weren't super effectual at taking her down, but it says a lot to me that Oda specifically writes a force that science cannot even overcome. Going into the chapter, though, we have Kid continuously launching out his damned punk technique, which is really cool. Honestly, I really should have seen a railgun being one of the highest, strongest powers that he can do, because that's just kind of where magnetism leads you, in a sense. Particularly because that's just one of the strongest things that we know of to generate magnetic power with, other than, electricity with a coil. But we do see in this chapter that he uses a projectile with his damned punk, which is really important. It seemed a little bit weird that it was rebuffing off of Big Mom, and that's why she realized that she could, maybe survive this and get up after the attack. But it just seemed a little bit of an odd way of indicating it. Maybe it was just to be clear about how a railgun actually works, which is the reason in the real world why they're not super effectual is because we can't really get them to, we can't generate that much magnetic force to pierce through actually heavy armor. It's more for light armor, at least I found in my research. But the fact that Kid's Devil Fruit is to generate magnetic forces makes a lot of sense for his ability to lead him to a railgun. So it is pretty cool to actually see that. What I didn't really think is that Big Mom would be strong enough to still not be pushed back by it. That is just insanity, the fact that she can still hold on. And I think Kid and Law's crews are just as surprised as I am, because they see this ungodly beam of power blasting into an emperor, and it doesn't really seem to be doing anything. At least that's the impression I think Big Mom wants us to get. She is struggling, but she is by no means being easily blasted away by this thing. It is insanity, which is probably why science alone in the railgun or the raid suit is not enough by itself to blast Big Mom away, which is crazy. So, noticing that she's stuck, kind of in a pinch here, she tries to use her soul focus because it doesn't require her hands that she's currently using to try and stop herself from falling. And just as we all kind of thought, soul focus won't work on Law and Kid. They're far too stubborn and far too unafraid of an emperor, a mere emperor, as Jinbei would say. So Kid and Law have a badass moment of pushing her back and deciding, no, this is like the fifth time that they've had a badass moment of a one-liner against Big Mom, but hey, it finally worked, and they managed to push her back. Law, being a smart guy, realizes that if Kid does knock her down, all that's going to happen is the exact same thing that happened last time he tried this, in that she's just going to call for her homies, and her homies will fly up and rescue her and bring her back, and that's all that's going to keep happening. So Law decides to just drop a whole new awakening ability. Never mind being tired from using awakening and using it repetitively, he's using a whole nother branch of it, which is just, yeah, it's great to see, but I thought they would be a lot more tired than they are, apparently. And he uses R Room, which I also suppose kind of tells us that it's not Kroom, like a lot of people thought, or Chrome, as a lot of people thought. It's just got to be K Room and R Room, because Room doesn't really flow too well. But anyway, so he uses a new technique that makes the silence fruit completely and utterly pointless, because the Ope Ope Nomi can just do that as well, which, that's nice to know about. But he silences Big Mom entirely so that she can't call her homies, which seems a little bit weird. Misery is there, and I at first thought that Misery was a combination of Prometheus and Hera, but her hair is still on fire, which means Prometheus is just kind of there sitting on her head. She is silenced and can't call for her homies, and Kid hits her with another damned punk shot. I don't know how many of those he can do. I'm assuming it's just the requirements being a piece of scrap that is magnetic, doesn't work on non-ferrous materials, and stamina, because he just needs to generate that magnetic force, which is the power of his devil fruit. I assume it just takes a lot of stamina, very much like Law's would. So he hits her with another shot as she is silenced, and as Big Mom starts to lose her grip, Misery comes in to try and save her, and Law just cuts her cleanly in two. Why he didn't do this before, I have no idea, but I'm glad he's done it. It's sliced now, which is great. So it's actually a very nice moment that we have here with Law, in that his callback to Corazon and his callback to the abilities of the quiet fruit, the calm fruit, which we haven't seen for quite a while now. But it's very cool to get that reintroduction, and the point where it is reintroduced is the final technique wherein this new generation finally takes down an emperor. So I guess even the Marines had a very small hand, fairly significant hand to play in this, even though it was more of a personal thing. One of the biggest moments of this chapter, and for some of the chapters that we've had recently, which have been quite huge, is the dethroning of an emperor, which is just insanity. I've been reading One Piece for a few years now, and I don't know, if you asked me a few months ago, I thought this would have been much further down the line, but here we finally are. Not even Luffy being the first one to take down an emperor in the story, but rather, I guess it was Blackbeard, but rather of our main cast, Law and Kid, working together to take down an emperor. I just wouldn't have seen that coming. But here it is. So as Big Mom is falling through Onigashima, she's been completely silenced by Law, literally, and she's being blasted through the floor by Kid. As she's doing this, making no sound, by the way, Yamato notices an emperor crashing through the ceiling, making absolutely no noise, which must be one of the most terrifying things that could happen. And she has really good reaction time, because as Big Mom is falling down, she's trying to grab onto something to try and steady herself. And unfortunately, she grabs onto a really big bomb. And that just explodes. That starts to take out the cousin bow. Yamato looks like she gets some kind of ice shield from her ability up just in time, which is great. I don't know how she's simultaneously freezing all the bombs around her, but I guess she's just got a really good devil fruit. I would say that the Kazenbo is definitely taken out, that he's dead now, there's nothing to worry about, but it's Oda. We can't even kill off a minor antagonist easily and quickly and definitively, so we'll just have to wait and see how that goes in the next chapter. Another person that does notice this is Momonosuke. I would assume that this explosion that Momo, well, doesn't hear but notices, is also entirely silent, because anything that Big Mom touches doesn't make any sound, which is odd, because I would have thought that because it's not actually the calm fruit, it would have been anything in the bubble, but I guess not. He's just got the most broken devil fruit ever. So Big Mom goes into a little bit of a monologue here, actually, where she starts to talk about the new pirate era and Gold Roger and what he started and what he's not here for, being the cause of what is her downfall. She would have wanted Roger to just tell them about the One Piece, have the easy route to it, and just know where the One Piece is and what it is. So Big Mom clearly doesn't understand what it actually means to be a pirate, at least in the same way that Luffy understands what it is, and Kaido's got a better understanding of it, but Big Mom just seems to be a chaotic force of nature with no real purpose behind her own power, which is, probably why she lost. Everywhere around Onigashima is devastated by this explosion. The live floor is toppled. Brook and Robin are running through a flaming hallway that is just being flipped upside down. Zoro is probably in the biggest amount of trouble right now. I do love the guy, but I really wish somebody was there to help him, because he is now careening off the side of Onigashima, which is not a good thing, particularly because Big Mom is the only really thing below him besides the big hole and the big bomb. But maybe Frankie will swoop in and save him at the last minute. We can only hope. What I found very interesting about Zorro in this position, also because it was a panel of Brook followed by a panel of Zorro, we first get confirmation that the Grim Reaper that we saw previously looming over Zorro is in fact not Brook, which I really thought it would be. I thought it would just be a skull joke because it's Odin, because it's Brook. Even in this crazy situation, it does kind of make sense to disguise yourself as a Grim Reaper with Robin, so you're both hidden, and then just walk out of Onigashima and meet up with Zorro. That made a lot of sense to me, but apparently that's not what happened. What I do find interesting is Zorro was lying on his back with this Grim Reaper looming over him, and now he is lying face down in a pool of his own blood. The pool of his own blood is to be expected, given he had literally one of the biggest fights we've ever seen in One Piece. But he was saying that he couldn't move, and now he is face down on the floor, contrary to his, face up position previously. I'm a little bit worried that he took a physical attack from that Grim Reaper and has been flipped over as a result of that. It would seem a little bit weird for him to just randomly flip over from an illusion, but I guess we're going to have to wait and see and find out if Zorro is actually dead, or if he has to be revived, or if this is a JoJo style situation where you can come back if you have the will for it. We're going to have to find out. Speaking of the will, we have what I thought would at first was a conclusion to the Raizo and Fukurokuju fight, but is not, because we haven't got a title card for that one yet. So apparently Fukurokuju is still hanging in there. He is incredibly on fire and massively in need of water, as opposed to our stoic Raizo that needs for nothing but his lord, which is great. I think that I believe it was Raizo that was fuming about the heat of the fumes at Odin's execution. I think this would be his self-imposed penance for that. This would be him saying, yes, Lord Odin, I understand now that these things require more will than your need to express yourself about them, or however you can shorten that. He understands what Odin was about back at the execution days, and he's changed, and he's proving that to us. So this is one of the points where I think the name of the chapter comes in fantastically, because as Big Mom is monologuing about Gold Roger and the country holding a bit of the One Piece, and Kid and Law not being able to defeat her, even to her hopefully dying breath, but I guess we'll find out. I don't think she'll die, but yeah, because then Zeus would be gone, and, merchandising and things like that. So we'll see. But as she's falling into this giant hole that Law created because of Kid's ability, and what genuinely looks like actually just a nuclear bomb from our world falling behind her, there is a massive, massive explosion, easily double the size of the Flower Capital. And it doesn't even look like it's a kilometer out. And what's interesting about this is there have been a few moments recently in different chapters where we could see the clouds being split or something like that. That would make it very, very obvious to anyone looking up at Onigashima that this giant impending disaster is careening towards them. And nobody at the Flower Capital seems to have noticed. Did nobody look in the sky when they launched the lanterns? I thought that was the whole point of the end of the Fire Festival. But anyway, a few times now, massive things have happened that nobody has seemingly noticed in the Flower Capital up until this. It may be a silent explosion, which is really cool, but the Big Mom exploding not even a kilometer away from the Flower Capital in this massive eruption of flames has to be seen by somebody. So I think it's actually quite important that we're talking about falling on deaf ears, because Big Mom literally fell right next to the people of the Flower Capital who are completely unaware of any of this. Not the double dragons, not the biggest of moms, not the little 19-year-old kid going up to the roof and beating the crap out of the dragon. None of this has been seen by anyone in the Flower Capital. As well as, because it's silence, they are literally deafened ears. So Big Mom wouldn't have alerted them by noise anyway, regardless of what she did, even, despite all of her trying. So I think this is one of my favorite chapter names that, comes back in later in the chapter. Much like the Tower. The Tower was really good when you discover what it was about at the end. I'm getting off topic. So we finally see the triumphant Kid, who looks completely passed out and exhausted, and the ever stoic Law chilling off to the side there, who have finally taken down an emperor. Now, they didn't do this by themselves, not by a long way. Even Jinbei helped with taking down Big Mom, and so did Marco in a lot of small senses. She has a really good healing ability, and she has all of her homies, and she's got the backing of the Beast Pirates. It was a long time to get to where we are here, but now she has been taken down definitively. We got the text box and everything. An Emperor of the Sea has finally been beaten, which means it's only a matter of time until the other Emperor of the Sea gets taken down, which is going to be even bigger, I'm sure. As for how we will see the other Emperor being taken down, I have a few thoughts on that, mostly being that Queen was first launched up off of Onigashima by Sanji. King was then struck down by Zoro off of Onigashima, or the skies just outside of Onigashima. And Kaido is fighting literally on the roof with Luffy, whose biggest thing is blasting someone away. And I'm pretty sure he's even said that twice or three times to Kaido, that he'll blast him away. Like he did with Buggy and Alvida and Crocodile and pretty much everyone, because that's his thing. That's what Luffy does. So, I would assume that King and Queen and Kaido will all land in the Flower Capital in front of everyone at the Fire Festival, defeated, and in King's case, unmasked as well for the first time in front of those people. Because if there was a time to involve the people of the Flower Capital and let them know that they are being saved, it could have been any chapter up until now. Honestly, the Twin Dragons, the splitting of the sky, the Scabbards fighting Kaido, Queen being launched, King being taken down. I am amazed that nobody has seen anything about this. So I would think, given that we're actually in quite a short time frame here, that when Queen gets defeated and King gets defeated and Kaido gets defeated, that they will all land roughly, if not exactly, in the same place for everyone to see that they have been taken down. Because the same way that Kaido mentioned, nobody saw Luffy get knocked off of Onigashima, it didn't really count because it won't really stop their advancement. Knocking Kaido and his two biggest subordinates completely out cold right in front of everyone else is how you get them to stop believing that he's a deity and get their support behind kicking him out. Orochi will probably just get killed by Hiyori. I'm perfectly fine with that. Everyone has had a try cutting him down, except for Zoro. Maybe somebody will pick up Zoro and let him have a slice at Orochi, but I would think that Hiyori's going to get it. Or maybe that's how she gets Enma back from him for that one kill. Maybe I'll make a video about that. Anyway, I think that would make a lot of sense. And then we have the same triumphant moment with Luffy finally having taken down an emperor, except him will be by himself. Not because he did the whole fight, but the finishing of Kaido will be a one-on-one against Luffy, because that is where Luffy stands now. He stands at the point of the story and in the One Piece world where he can actually fight against an emperor. He'll probably still have a few more things to learn and a few more places to go, the same way he adapts a new technique and then has to get used to it, like he did with Gear 4th, 3rd, and 2nd. I think that he is now at the point where he's literally fighting toe-to-toe with Kaido, but has a chance at winning. It's no longer a one-on-one, Kaido will always win, because now we have somebody who can actually, if not create the circumstances to get into that fight, still have the will and determination and drive to do it. So now at the end of the chapter we have the very convenient hole in the basement where Yamato and Momonosuke can now have a conversation with each other. But now that they have this very convenient plot hole, let's call it, to have a conversation through, even though Yamato had to run all the way around the island and down in a time limit, they can now have a conversation about how close Zunisha is getting. And I'm not entirely certain on where to go with this information, because although it's not entirely surprising that Zunisha was a companion of Joy Boy, I kind of assumed that they would be on the same side. I didn't really guess they would be directly companions or anything like that, but it's much of the same thing. I always assumed that the serious crime that he committed was in the eyes of the world government, because whether it's a crime or not depends on whose vision you're looking at. And it didn't really make much sense for it to be calling it a crime if it thought it was a good thing. I kind of assumed that Zunisha would be on the good side. Now we have a bit more confirmation on that, knowing that Zunisha was a companion of Joy Boy. What I find particularly interesting about Zunisha even being here is that Zunisha doesn't have free will to be able to just walk over to Wano and go, Momonosuke needs my help. I should just better head over there now. How would Zunisha know about it? How would he communicate that? How would he know which direction to go? It leaves a lot of things open ended. But what we do know is that Zunisha must be commanded by someone of the Kozuki family, which means that either Zunisha got orders recently or a very, very long time ago, specifically for this day. We knew that Odin somehow knew that this day would come. He predicted the war 20 years from now, where the upstart pirates would come in and take over. I don't know how he knew that. We really should talk about that at some point. But that means that even back then, or even further back then in Joy Boy's day 800 years ago, Zunisha could have been given the command to come to Wano now for a particular reason. So that's where I think it's all going, but it's still a little bit unclear as to what Zunisha is doing here, what can Zunisha do here. I'm very curious to see where this is going, but a few things are starting to connect together at the very least. But that's basically all I wanted to talk about for this chapter, just kind of give it a basic outline. Not too many things were entirely concluded here, except for Big Mom. But if there is something that I didn't see in the chapter, or something that I might have misinterpreted or misunderstood, please just drop a comment and let me know. And I guess I'll pick it up in the next chapter review, which will be 1041. Cheers. So one thing I did want to talk about that I may have neglected to mention in the review was how the Punctureville attack that Law used recently is going to affect the Luffy and Kaido fight, which is not a huge point, but I did just want to bring it up because it is quite interesting. Either Oda was setting this up in such a way that the huge hole straight through Onigashima is going to be more important later, so that's just kind of the convenient hole that we're going to throw all of the emperors that are on the island down, or it's going to alert Kaido and Luffy to what is happening down below them, more than they already do know, given that they are observation users already and they're not that stupid, to be honest. But I thought I'd just completely change my clothes and come back and mention that one last thing. So yeah, that's it. Cheers.